I am on a quest to conquer a dragon, to sculpt the best dragon I could ever sculpt and immerse it in a giant resin D20 to make the ultimate Dungeons and Dragons dice. And boy oh boy is it a battle. I wrestle with this dragon and this project the entire way and almost nothing goes according to plan. I might have to abandon ship.
Good luck, I really wish you the best.
Live dragon. But hey, that's a real adventure, isn't it? What do we do? This video was sponsored and inspired by Dragonair Silent Gods. More on them later in the video. I love D&D and I love custom dice. For my 8th wedding anniversary, which is bronze, my wife got me this set of custom bronze D&D dice. And I was obsessed with those like liquid core and really cool dice that as you use them, you can just see cool stuff happening inside. So when Dragonair Silent Gods approached me for a sponsored video and I saw this in their marketing material, I immediately pictured a dragon encased in a giant resin D20, which is gonna be tough to pull off. So let's figure out how. You see, the problem with resin is as it cures, it heats up. And the more of it altogether that heats up, the hotter it gets and the more warped it becomes. This sad project was a hugely time-consuming effort put in by Tabletop Time. And there's actually a whole bunch of intricate terrain and characters inside here, but the resin heated up so much that it let out bubbles, warped the whole thing, and none of the interior craftsmanship is able to be appreciated. I need to get my project started, and I need to start off by building a frame that I'm going to work within, using a whole bunch of triangles. Now the triangles of my D20 are all a little bit over 15 centimeters on each side, and when constructed that will make the entire D20 just over 26 centimeters tall. So it's just a matter of taping and connecting each of these triangles one at a time until we have the structure of our D20 mold. In theory, if I do this, look at that! Oh, yes! That is so good! So I can sculpt, test it all, put in there, I've got room to breathe, and then when I'm ready to pour, I only need the top one off and I just pour up to there. Just so you know, I'm gonna be scared through every stage of this project because there's the ever-looming resin pour coming up, and if it goes wrong, it will go very wrong and ruin all of the work that I'll have done so far. So let's get to work. Now while we're setting up all the interior components, we're not just doing a dragon head, we're doing a dragon that's breathing fire. I have to first sculpt it and then create a mold I can create the fire effect resin pour in. So just like the head, I work from an armature as a base and use monster clay to fill out and then sculpt the fire effect. Then I make a silicon mold of my fire sculpture and set that aside to harden so later I can take the clay out and pour resin in. So it's mostly clear, but it's got enough pigment in there that light should hit it and highlight it. I'm just gonna go for this. This is gonna be very messy because I need to try and get it in all the little nooks and crannies so they don't turn into bubbles. I'm just gonna slam it. You ready? Whoa! And if I push it in there, there you go, get the bubbles out. This may be a huge failure. That is the best I can do. I just hope it works. So I'll just come back tomorrow and see if it did. Now it's time to turn my dragon armature into a dragon. Best part is Tom's finished wiring it up so we have buttons to turn him on. How good is that? Oh my God, I'm so chuffed. And so far, everything has been made delicately to fit inside the housing of my D20. I am so excited about this project. I love dragons. I love D20s. I love D&D, which is why you're gonna love Dragonair Silent Gods, the sponsor of this video, who have actually partnered with D&D to bring some of the iconic Dungeons and Dragons characters you know and love into their awesome game. Dragonair Silent Gods is available on PC, Mac, Steam, Epic Games Store, and mobile devices, iOS and Android. With over 10 million downloads since its global launch, and of course it's free to get and play, ranked #1 in the download leaderboard in 13 regions during their launch. Dragonair Silent Gods will introduce iconic Dungeons & Dragons characters to the game on November 17th. Dragonair is an open-world strategy RPG with a really deep and rich story. In the Dragonair world, there are multiple dragon gods who have taken on humanoid forms, and players can either ally with them or battle against them on the continent. With certain battles and encounters in the game that involve the use of dice and rolls and checks to add an element of randomness and excitement, in Dragonair you can create unique characters, choose from 3 kinsfolk and 4 classes, assign stats for their attributes in strength, intelligence, and charisma, and with exciting grid-based tactical battles you can assemble your adventuring party with up to 5 heroes. Go check out Dragonair Silent Gods for free with my link in the description. And of course, if you use my exclusive code, you'll get a limited edition gift pack. Go check it out, and a huge thank you to Dragonair Silent Gods for sponsoring this video and inspiring this project. Now, of course, this is going to be a red dragon, but I don't want to waste all of my valuable dragony red polymer clay, so I just grab a tan and brown to do the foundation layer of sculpting on our dragon. With that gently hand-baked with a heat gun, then I can go through with my burgundy dragon red and work on properly detailing out and bulking out the dragon. The first step is to block out the initial shape. I need to punch out the silhouette in areas that need it, such as the brows and cheekbones and the spikes on top, the horns of course, and the jaw. Once I'm happy with the overall shape of my dragon, it's time to start adding details. So I'm starting inside the mouth, laying in the black of the inner lining, the pink of the gums, and then the tedious work of adding the tiny teeth. It's fiddly work, but the result is very cool. Every area I add detail just refines and finalizes in a way that is super satisfying. Now it's a matter of going through and adding that detail to the rest of the head. Rough, dry, and scaly skin, and of course, chunky, ribbed, and weathered horns. So far so good. I am really happy with the dragon head. I just haven't touched the bottom half of the dragon yet. So now I've got to go through that process all over again, starting off with the blocking, then on to refining the shape, and of course, last but not least, adding all those details. I have my dragon sculpt. This is one of the coolest things I've ever sculpted. Add to that this. Oh my God. And it's not even painted yet. I'm gonna add in subtle layers of coloring and washes to make this look less flat and give it that little bit of extra pop, which will also hopefully make it stand out from within the dice. Oh my, I just realized I'm immersing this thing in resin. All of this work could be a total waste. Now I'm nervous again. But we're not there yet, so let's finish this painstakingly, carefully created creation, starting off by tweaking the colors of the areas that are different to my basic clay skin tone, such as the chest area and the horns. Then it's a matter of going through my dragon with washes and pulling it back from the raised areas with a paper towel to leave just the shading and the grunge in the recesses and cracks. Last but not least, it's a matter of going all around it with overbrushing and dry brushing to add punch in those raised areas and really bring out those sharp edges and details. A finishing touch I want to add is actually coloring in the inside of the eyes. I do this with some alcohol ink so that of course the light can continue to shine through, but it picks up on that color that I'm adding in there. So we have that nice hot glow of the eyes. I am so happy with this and it's looking so good, and it might not forever. So I'm going to savor the moment and share with you some epic halfway through the project dragon reveals. Because let's face it, this dragon is a finished standalone project. Whether he survives the next step or not, at least we'll have this footage to appreciate forever. So in theory, I have my flame mold ready to demold, I believe is the term. Okay, here's the big reveal. Ooh, that's something. Oh. All right, with a bit of cleanup, and I reckon we could sort of Dremel these and get some tips out of them. I think we've got a flame, which means we can start putting this baby together. With that reshaped, then I add a little bit of alcohol ink around the outside just to add a little bit more of a fire aesthetic. It's all on the line now. Here is the plan. I have to put in the mold release first, putting that in. But for the next step, which is going to be using UV resin, I need to do it in layers that might detach because of the mold release. So I have to hold everything in place precariously and one panel at a time build out the structural support. You can see this tiny ring of white bubbles around the outer edge of the bottom of the dragon because it's expanded and contracted, even just the UV resin. I'm hoping that the big deep pour will fill that in, but that shows how this couldn't go wrong, and this is just the beginning. Tenuously, so far so good. I've done 5 panels. The fire is in place. The dragon is in place. Also worth showing that we're already getting some warping. Around the outer edges, it's pulling away slightly from the surface. That's because it's expanded, then it's contracted, and it's not bonding. So it is sort of releasing from the acrylic outer shell, but it is sort of shrinking. The next layers of resin will fill those gaps and hopefully fix it. But this whole process is like, is it going terribly wrong? Maybe. Hopefully not. I think we're ready for the big pour. First, and I reckon this needs like music, like Step 1, mix in all of this deep pour resin and hope to the gods of fire and dragons that it's enough. 2, I'm gonna mix in a couple of drops of little bits of pigment. I always tend to do too much, so I'm really trying to just do a minimal amount, but I just want something in there to fill that space with just a touch of pigment. Next, I'm going to subdivide these pours into a small bucket that fits into a vacuum chamber. I'm going to try and suction out the bubbles one batch at a time and continuously put all of this into my D20 as bubble-free as possible. There's a lot of bubbles. Let's have a look at it in a cup. Just like Mummy used to make. What do? Do we hope it gets better over time? Or do we jump ship and try and switch resins? This could all go terribly wrong. We had to jump ship. The poop hit the fan. You saw how cloudy that was. I couldn't risk that. I was really hoping to let this cure over the weekend. We had a whole contraption we were going to use to keep the temperature down, but we have to let it go for now. We'll come back on Monday and try a different resin because something went wrong there. But at least we've still got this. That's the most important thing. Okay, we're back after the weekend. Project isn't lost yet. And in fact, this has been a very interesting learning experience. So at the end of the last resin pour attempt, we just decanted all the resin into a couple of buckets and left it outside to cure safely. But I kept a sample of the cloudy resin to see if it cleared up. It has cleared up somewhat. However, about an hour later, I checked outside and those buckets looked crystal clear and they were still liquid. So I took the liberty to pour some into this cup, which as you can see is much clearer than the cloudier one that stayed in the studio, which tells me, because it was a hot day, temperature is my issue. So not only have we bought enough resin to properly fill it this time, but we've also pre-prepared it. Based on the advice of the manufacturer, we've put the part A in a nice warm water bath, and in theory, we'll be able to get clear resin and pour it in when it's clear. Then I need to control the temperature so it doesn't get so hot. Now, fortunately, just a couple of weeks ago, Evan and Caitlin released one of their annual videos trying to do a giant pumpkin resin pour. I'll link to that video in the description. Go check out their channel. But I asked them for some advice and they've been super helpful through this whole process. Thank you so much, Evan and Caitlin. In that video, they put their most successful, well-retained shaped pour inside a fridge to cure, surrounded by water. So I'm going to follow that process. Once we have a clear pour in here, I'm going to put it inside this bucket, which I've leveled the bottom with monster clay, put this inside the fridge, fill it with water around the sculpture, seal it in its lid, and pray that when we come back in a few days' time, we have a D20 dragon. So as you can see, knowing that I needed the part A to be nice and warmed up beforehand meant that I had mostly clear resin mixes. Every time I went outside to let it sit out for 5 minutes to loosen up some of those bubbles, we seemed to have a path to getting a clear, deep resin pour. Now it's just a matter of taking it and putting it in the tub, in the fridge, surrounded by water. If that comes out looking like I can see a dragon and it still keeps a similar shape, I'm a happy boy. Everything about this project is so scary. But that is sealed and entombed. While I am extremely nervous, I am feeling so much better about this than I would have been putting in the cloudy resin, which obviously wouldn't have worked. So that failure might have led to hopefully a success. With that said, I'm feeling extra special because Evan and Caitlin recorded a nice good luck message for us to enjoy.
I hope the pain that we suffered and the lessons we learned with chunk 1 and 2 will help you with your giant resin pour.
Yeah, I'm sure it's gonna go great. Good luck.
It's gonna go great.
It's gonna go great.
2 days later, it was finally time to see the status of the pour. Siphoned out the rest of the water and revealed a mostly intact resin pour. There's lots of micro bubbles and quite a bit of warping in some areas at the surface. I have enough of a shape here to rescue it, but we need to start off by making sure we get those lights sorted out. And thankfully, because we have clean access to those internals, Tom could resolder the entirety of it. And this time, rather than those buttons, he's wired in a plug port for a wall adapter, so we could feasibly, if this ends up looking cool, put it on a shelf with pride. So it's rescue time. And while resin is frustrating in that you can't control the results, one of the great things about it is it's actually pretty patchable. So triangle by triangle and working my way bottom to top, I resurface every single side of my dice. What started off looking like a bit of a disaster actually now kind of looks intentional. Like if I had picked the ice dragon, for example, this would kind of be perfect. You could almost call it done. It looks like a big block of ice. The next step is actually to do a lot more work to try and pretty this up, which means a lot of sanding and potentially risking and ruining it. It could all go wrong from here. Why not get reveals of what we got right now? A fire dragon frozen in an icy D20. Now, as reasonably salvaged as that looks, I want to get as close to my vision as possible. And to do this, I am going to have to do a lot of sanding. My God, so much resin dust. This bit is kind of like magic and super satisfying. With a drop of resin on each surface, you create a window through to the creation inside. All of a sudden, it seems like our semi-disastrous resin cure doesn't seem all that disastrous. In fact, this might end up looking really cool. With the translucency of my D20 re-established, now I need to make as much of this dragon as I possibly can. Starting with an airbrush of some alcohol inks behind the dragon. This creates a little more opacity behind the dragon, so not as much light comes through and lights essentially the bubbles around the dragon, but also helps create a little bit more framing. With the blue and purple behind the oranges and reds of the dragon, hopefully he can stand out a little bit more. And it works so far. This is actually coming together. The vision I had is starting to be here, but I have a plan. If I make the dice numbers and surfaces around this, my best bet is also to design that based on a Dragonair dice. And it so happens that they sent me this reference of a nature-themed D20 with the leaves in the corners. So using this as inspiration and actually directly taking the frame of the inside of that out, I brought that into my laser cutting software to create a frame that looks like a nice craggy border. Then in place of the leaves on their dice, I took a Celtic fire image, traced that one down and put that in its place. My dice would be a fire dice skin. Same design approach, but with my flavor. They look really good. I just hope they look really good on here. Now, this was totally an accident. I just oriented the dragon based on where the fire would fit and look cool, but the 20 goes right on top. And while I may not have been getting critical successes with this project so far, I think this is a good omen. But we're not out of the woods yet. There's two really challenging parts about this step. One, I need to cure and attach these acrylic sheets to this with UV resin. So I have to try and have a perfectly even surface. Sticky fingers, fingerprints, any touching of the resin on the surface of these is there forever. This is the last step, and it's also the last opportunity for things to go disastrously wrong. But, I mean, I rolled a nat 20, so. We're so close to the finish line. I'm just praying to Timora, the goddess of good luck, that this project is going to turn out the way I think it can. I'm going to be honest, there hasn't been a single easy part of this project. And it is now, especially having gone through it, by far the most ambitious and detailed sculpture I've ever sculpted and painted. And the most unforgiving final touches part of the process. And as you've seen, things didn't go smoothly. Nothing went according to plan. And yet, coming on to the tail end of it, it's turning out to be one of the most satisfying builds I've ever had. And honestly, it all really comes full circle because it reminds me of my D&D adventures. Nothing ever goes according to anyone's plan, and that's because of the roll of the dice. That is because when you take chances, when you leap into the unknown, you're beckoning chaos and creativity, and though you never know what it's going to be like at the end of your adventure, you certainly have a story to tell, even if the destination looks a little bit different to what you had in your mind. In this video, like in some of my adventures, I tackled a beast. I faced a dragon. It took every skill I had. It took me to the brink of hell and back, but at the end of the day, I beat the dragon. I couldn't be more proud to put this on my shelf because it tells the story of the time I tried my hardest, and despite everything thrown at me, I came out on top. I had a goal to immerse a dragon inside a giant resin D20. Is it perfect? No. But did it work? Yes. There was so much that went wrong in this process, and we still ended up here. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, the journey. What matters most to me is that you've enjoyed this process. I love the outcome. I can't wait to put this on a shelf with pride, and I hope you are willing to hit that like button and subscribe for more of what we do here, which is trying our guts out at some pretty ambitious ideas and ending up with some pretty cool, if unpredictable, results. Thanks for watching.